you've got to have a relationship with your suppliers and your partners in the market that helps you understand what is their motivation.
Welcome to Create New Futures, thought-provoking conversations with leaders, experts, and interesting minds. Join us as we explore ideas and reflect on practices that you can use and apply to create and shape the future. With your host, author and strategy consultant, Aviv Shahar.
Welcome to Create New Futures, where we develop conversations with successful leaders to explore how you can create new futures for you and for your business. This is Aviv, and today I'm speaking with Greg Shoemaker. Greg is the global head of supply chain central and direct procurement services at HP. In his capacity as the Chief Procurement Officer, Greg leads procurement to the printing and the personal systems groups, and he is responsible for $23 billion in spend. Through Greg's leadership, the HP procurement team received numerous awards and recognitions for innovation and leadership in supply management and for its supply chain, social, and environmental responsibility efforts. I have collaborated with Greg over the last 11 years on a series of strategy efforts, and it has always been an adventure to work with his leadership team. And so naturally, I've been looking forward to this conversation today. Greg, it's great to have you here. Welcome.
Thank you, Aviv. Well, it's great to be here, and thank you for that introduction. And I'm very excited to share my experiences with your listening group.
Well, so let's jump right to it. You are leading the supply chain procurement function for many years, actually. What do you enjoy the most in your role? What gives you energy every day when you get up and come to work again?
Well, it's changed over the years. You know, in the beginning, I had followed a series of executives in the IT industry with Compaq and HP that had been a little bit of a merry-go-round, kind of changed leadership every year or two. And back then, my goal was to put together a team that would be successful consistently for many years. And so that has been kind of the overriding theme that I've tried to pursue for quite some time. I think, you know, more recently that focus has changed, although I'm still very much energized about setting up the team for future success and continue to work a lot on that. But I think, more recently, it's really about helping the company to stay successful in this very challenging environment on a year-to-year basis. So it has evolved over time and continues to evolve.
And so setting your team to success in the early stages, what were the one or two or three top focus areas? How did you approach that opportunity and challenge?
Well, I think you have to take a broad view of the environment that you're working on. And of course, you have to be short-term and tactically successful because we are in the American business environment. You're only as good as your last quarter and only as good as you're projecting for the next quarter. And so you have to have that daily operational and execution focus. But at the same time, you have to think out a few years ahead and look at what's over the horizon, not just what's on the horizon, and really plan and strategize for the future.
And you commented on setting now your function and the company to success in the tough environment. Let's reflect back a bit, because even the last 7 or 10 years represented many internal company changes, and you also led a function that needed to deal with volatile markets. And so this for you has been what we call a VUCA world, a volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. What are some key lessons that you can share about leading resiliently in VUCA environments?
Well, I think first off, you have to stay grounded. And what I mean by that is you have to really know what success looks like and evaluate that as the conditions around you change, because success may change as well. But you have to really identify what does success look like and make sure you're grounded on that as the environment changes. And I think one of the ways that we've been able to successfully do that is make sure that we've got a grounding in the facts, in the data, and what the environment is leading you towards from a what success looks like, and make sure that you've got a good understanding of that environment with the facts and as much information, relevant information as you can acquire and put to use on how you may need to modify what you're doing in order to be successful.
You and I have spoken around this theme for years, and on a number of occasions, you described to me how you're seeing an inflection point in the market, which often represented deciphering beyond the data, intuiting where the market is going based on incomplete information, because we never have complete data. Give me a comment on this, the place of judgment call and the importance of understanding your markets well, such that you can indeed develop intuition and rely on your judgment.
Well, that's an interesting question. I have an engineering background, and so as an engineer, you always try to gather all the facts that you can, and both in engineering and business, you don't always have all the data, but as an engineer, you can kind of extrapolate, based on the data that you do have. In business, there's a lot more shades of gray, and I think you can use those same principles, but when you extrapolate out what could happen or what your intuition tells you, you need to have a lot more information about the companies and the people that you're dealing with, and what makes them tick. You've got to have a relationship with, in my case, with your suppliers and your partners in the market that helps you understand what is their motivation, what are their agendas, and that, I think, helps guide you, as you try to extrapolate, a future outcome when you don't have all the data that you need. So,
what would be an example, Greg, where that knowledge of your suppliers and the insight to their motivations and concerns, can you share an example where that insight led you to make a decision or take a position in the market relative to the competition, where, say, the market went in the zig and you went in the zag, to go opposite to the market because you understood something that others did not?
Well, there's probably a couple of examples. One that comes to mind is in a year or so ago, a big provider of LCD panels decided to exit a certain portion of the market where they weren't being profitable anymore, and in fact, it was more than just an intuition, but what they came and told us they were going to do that, but they did that before they told anyone else by many, many months. And I think the reason they did that and allowed us to change our strategy was because of the relationship that we had, and where we had been transparent with them about, in the past, changes in our strategy. They did likewise. And so that's kind of a moniker for how the rest of it happens. It's, I think, through those long-term relationships where you have some transparency, you've built up trust over the years, you get insights, or or you can draw insights from just comments that they're making to you about the future of their business or where they're headed.
How have you approached developing and sustaining such long-term relationships where practically your personal mutual trust and respect and relationships with some of those strategic suppliers benefited you and your team and the company in a differential way? What were the guiding principles that enabled you to build that relationship? Give me both your philosophy of relationship building and perhaps another, for instance, story that would exemplify it, if you can.
Well, I think it's really not that difficult. It's in some regards the golden rule, of treating people like you want to be treated, and having transparency. Now, in business, you can't have complete transparency because some things are company secrets or intellectual property or financial information that can't be shared publicly. Those are things, obviously, that due to company policy, moral, and ethics, you just can't share. But I think the point is that you want to be transparent. You want to be as forthright as you can possibly be. You want to have fair dealings. We're in a very tough business, and so we have to compete very aggressively, and so we sometimes have to carry out very tough negotiations, and we don't always agree on the terms and conditions, and that can be quite challenging at times. But I think at the end of the day, there's no subterfuge or no real hidden agendas with our supply base. They know where we're headed, and we treat them with fairness and respect. And I think we get that likewise. An example of that might be that we were conducting a very tough negotiation a number of years ago with an Asian company that had come to the States to negotiate with us on a contract that had some pretty large implications because it was intended to be a multi-year deal, and it was going to be a tough negotiation. And we stayed on site, up through like midnight of that night, and it was extremely tough. We finally came to an agreement, but at the end of the day, they told us that as tough as it was, they knew they could get to a fair agreement with us, which they did. And
right.
that was just the history that they had with us. All right.
Yes, history of fairness, of transparency, and something they knew that they could trust, and also based on long-term relationships of having gone through similar negotiations in the past.
Exactly.
What are some of the crises or natural disasters or geopolitical events in recent years that tested you and your organization in a significant way and forced you to develop quick remediations and contingencies? There's plenty of those around in the last few years. I'm curious if you'd highlight one or two, the kind of lessons that you're able to harvest from those experiences.
Well, as you indicated, there have been many, right? There was a flood in Thailand in 2011. There's been the volcano in Iceland that shut off air traffic for a while. More recently, just a few years ago, was the tsunami that devastated the nuclear power plant in Japan, Fukushima. That one probably had some of the best lessons, and there were tens, if not hundreds, of suppliers, and all the way through the supply chain down 3 or 4 levels that were impacted. And of course, we immediately put our war room together, so to speak, where we were actioning our backup plans and second sourcing and inventory, tracking ingredients and I'll tell you one thing that we did learn about that is there were a number of suppliers whose employees suffered personally in devastating ways, and some of those that we knew about we shied away from. Right, we didn't really reach out to them immediately because we knew they had more important things to go work on and to help their people than to get their factories running again. And in one particular case, we didn't go see this particular supplier until maybe 2 or 3 months after the event, and they expressed such gratitude to us for that because they mentioned that some of our competitors were showing up the next week and they had no time for them because they were trying to save their employees' families. I think the lesson there is that there's always a personal and human aspect to business, and you need to keep that in mind, I think, at all times, and make sure that whatever actions you are taking are the right things to do, morally, ethically, and of course, legal and policy-wise. But, there's an example where we gained a lot of, I would say, relationship equity by staying away.
Right.
And letting them, get back on their feet.
In those war room situations when you're managing through a crisis, what are some of the learnings about the kind of behaviors and the leadership practices that best lead a team through high pressure situations you need to solve, and there aren't clear or obvious answers? What are some lessons and practices from those experiences?
Well, I think it's, again, it's a lot of it's just using good common sense. It's staying grounded in what you can actually affect. It's, keeping your cool and keeping things as objective and unemotional as possible, acting on the facts themselves and not on conjecture. And when you don't have the facts, you just have to work to get those facts and stay cool, calm, and collected. And that's probably one of the biggest challenges is that when the production line is potentially in jeopardy and there's a lot of pressure from everyone in the company, including all your stakeholders. That's probably the most critical time to make sure that you've keeping things under control and viewing things in a very objective and fact-based manner.
Yes. What enables you to adapt and be agile and to stay, as you say, calm, cool, and collected, and composed, and appear to be level-headed in your decision? What specifically helps you through such times?
Well, I think it's just a matter of attitude. I think it's understanding that no matter how big the problem is, if you don't resolve it today, you'll have that problem to solve tomorrow. And I'm not hoping to sound flippant, but there's only so much you can address in a given time period, and I think you try to prioritize those things, and those things that you can't get to, that you move to another day, and you make sure that your stakeholders understand that you're pursuing solutions in a fact-based and prioritized manner, and most people will understand that. But I think that I've learned over the years that you usually come to a better solution when you're able to keep things under control and use the facts and get and value other people's opinion as well, and
right.
make sure that you're using their experience to the best outcome that you can.
When you reflect on your many years of negotiation, what's another memorable negotiation story that you can tell?
Well, I remember actually having an internal negotiation, as it were, where there was a couple of parties involved, and one of them just really lost his cool and got quite emotional, and I had to try to, and actually I did kind of get things back in control, and during the conversation, I said, look, none of us are going to speak about this again. We're going to forget about this and just move on and objectively resolve this issue. And I think that meant a lot to the person that had the emotional outburst, and because we were able to kind of put that behind us. And
so that goes with this principle of never forget that it is business, but it also is personal. And never forget to remember to integrate the human factor. It is about human beings. We are not like machines. We do have feelings, thoughts, experiences, and somehow finding a way to include that dimension of the human experience is a recurring theme in being successful, both internally leading your team and certainly with suppliers and partners.
Absolutely. I think, I've said a lot about keeping the emotion out of it, but you do have to recognize the human element and what makes relationships matter and what makes relationships successful. And then based on that, you can have a much better shot at, having a positive outcome with the business challenge that you might have.
You have encouraged your team to take calculated risks, by which I mean taking smart risks when the timing is right. Give me, if you can, an example of a smart risk taking and reveal a bit your thinking process. I know you already said, look, it is about common sense. It is about being grounded in the data. So I understand that side of the conversation. What else goes into the right kind of risk-taking in business?
Well, I think you have to, again, make sure that you're grounded in the data, both on a look backwards and a look forward. So, it's kind of like a sporting event, for example. Let's say you're pitching a baseball game and it's the third time through the lineup that you're facing these same hitters. Well, you and the catcher know what worked and what didn't work in the previous at bats, and you'll use that to shape your strategy for the current at bat. I think business is very much the same, and that's so to take risks, I think you need to understand what happened in the past, what worked and what didn't work. Make sure you have that data. And then if you can use that to extrapolate, potential future outcomes that can, help shape your decision about a risk. You shouldn't take risk just, without considering, all the alternative outcomes and making sure that you're prepared for the downside if it were to occur, as well as the upside. And
right.
I think probably the best examples are where we're trying to see where the market is going when you have let's say you have a volatile pricing component or component that is very volatile in its pricing. That's usually an opportunity to try to hedge by making some inventory investment that's more than what you currently need. And those can be challenging situations, and you're almost never going to get it always right. But I think if you prepare for that and have your analytics done in such a way that you know what the ups and downs are, then you're in a position to take that risk and deal with the outcome.
So let me now ask you about the element of risk outside business, more in the personal adventure side of life, because I know that you love the elements, you love the outdoor, and you have explored the African safaris and fishing in the Gulf and range of experiences. What would you say was the scariest adventure you have encountered?
Well, you might think that hunting in Africa might have some, and it did have some scary things occur, but probably the scariest one was fishing in the Gulf a few years back. I was in a relatively small boat with two of my best fishing buddies, and we were probably about 20 miles offshore, and we were going to head in, and I couldn't get up on a plane. And the back end of the boat was just weighted down, and I opened the hatch up, and my bilge was completely full of water. And we were like minutes from sinking. And what had happened was one of my bait well pumps had dislodged itself and was pumping water directly into the bilge. And we probably had, I don't know how much, 1,000 pounds of water in the back of the boat. I'm guessing, but so we quickly moved one guy to the front of the boat, and the other guy's bailing out the back of the boat, and I've got it throttled all the way down, but still am just creeping along. And I was really scared that we were going to sink, but we didn't. We got out of it, and so there was a little bit of a lesson in further preparation there.
Yes.
And making sure that all your pump hoses are securely fastened before venturing out into the open ocean.
Yes. As we approach the conclusion of this dialogue, and let me ask you this: you're probably towards the later stage of your professional career. Did you anticipate that you'll be doing what you're doing now when you started? How much has this been a planned journey or a surprise?
Well, I think it's been a bit of both. As I mentioned earlier, I started my career as an engineer. Actually worked in the oil business for a few years. Went into business for myself, building custom metal buildings. And, I've done a lot of things. And when I went to work in the computer industry, it was also as a production engineer. And I did have a plan to want to move up the management chain into a vice president role, and actually had a bit of that laid out on paper. And that's something I mentor now and suggest to young folks coming into their careers, that they should have some sort of long-term plan. But I never in my wildest dreams really at that stage thought about procurement or even business related activities. I was really thought I'd be on the technical path. So that has been quite a surprise and quite a fulfilling one. I mean, it's been quite challenging and quite rewarding, and I never would have really thought that I'd be at this stage right now.
What advice would you give yourself if you were 25 again today, searching to find and develop your professional path?
Well, I would probably spend more time learning some additional languages.
Huh. Right.
I actually told a young man a few years ago to study international marketing and learn Mandarin.
Yes.
Which, I think there's great demand for that. But I think, probably, I have continued to advance my education. It took me a while to decide to do that. That's probably something I would have done sooner. I didn't go back to school to get a master's in business until I was 20 years out of my undergraduate work. I might have done that sooner, although I think it is important to get some business experience before going back for that secondary degree. I think it's easier. You have a broader knowledge of the world and the things that might help you in another education path. That's probably the thing that I would maybe do a little differently.
So you and I have collaborated over the last, 11, 12 years now, I think on 5 different times you brought me to work with you and your team. What's the 1 or 2 most important elements that you took from our collaboration and work together?
I think the biggest thing, Aviv, that you've helped us with consistently over the years is that you help us to develop a common vision of the future and a common set of initiatives to go work on to realize that future. And and it's all about galvanizing a team and getting a team to head in the same path. And I do like to use the sports analogy. If your team is not working towards the same goals and have a common set of plays to get there, or initiatives in the business vernacular, it's almost impossible to achieve that, whatever that goal is. So, that's the thing that I think our work over the years has really helped to galvanize and to make a reality and ultimately help us to be successful is, deciding what are those common important initiatives that will help us achieve that future goal and position that we want to be in.
Greg, share with me, just before we sign off, what is the 1 or 2 most important advice you've received earlier in life from a teacher, from a mentor, from a parent that you carried with you throughout your life?
A couple of things. One, most of my mentors were my family, and my father was a coach and an educator for his entire career before he passed away. And he told me 2 things. One, 2 things that I'll never forget. The first one was to, let those words roll around in your mouth a bit before they come out. And the meaning there is that, you should be thoughtful about what you say to people and make sure that you're adding value and not just talking just to be talking, because words are very important. And the second thing he said was that the mind cannot learn when the mouth is in motion. And, what that really means is that you should be a very good listener, right? And listen to and absorb what people have to say, and then respond after being thoughtful, via the previous note. And then there's one other person that I need to mention. That was very early in my career. When I first went to work out of college as an engineer, I was at a vertically integrated company, a small oil field OEM producer of offshore drilling equipment. And they put me through this rotation program. And the first person I was with was a man who was running a drill press. This is back before CNC machines, and he was running a Bridgeport drill press. All day long, he drilled holes in metal. Pretty boring job, right? But I sat with the guy for 3 or 4 days and listened to him talk about his philosophy of life. And he happened to be a preacher at a small Baptist church in a very small town in Texas, on Sundays. And so, the learning there was that you can learn something from almost everybody in life, regardless of what their appearance is or what you might think their station in life is. You can learn something from everyone. And I've tried to carry that through my entire professional career.
That's a beautiful legacy lessons to carry and to communicate and to teach. So thank you for these. Greg, where will you be in 10 years?
Probably fishing in the Gulf of Mexico. No, I'm hoping to. I'll be retired, I'm sure, and I'm hopeful that I can still make a positive impact on people through relationships, through my experience, and maybe there's some volunteer work I'll be doing, and maybe helping my family to realize their goals.
That's great. This has been a rich journey with you. Thank you for those thoughts and ideas you shared with us and with people listening to Create New Futures. And thank you for the partnership over a long period of time and the adventurous projects that we collaborated on. Always has been exciting to engage with your team.
Well, thank you, Aviv, for inviting me to share my experiences and our experiences together. I appreciate it, and hopefully good things will come out of this and maybe a kernel or two for those who are listening.
Here we are. We've landed this Create New Futures journey, and it's your time to take action. Here are a few steps you can take this week. First, build long-term relationship with partners and clients, relationships that are based in understanding, fairness, mutual respect, and trust. Second, understand your ecosystem and markets deeply to develop an intuitive sense of the dynamics and forces shaping these environments, such that you will be able to make judgment calls and choose a course of action. And third, in crisis, remember you lead by staying grounded, by preserving common sense, and by keeping your cool and keeping your focus on what you can affect. One more thing, you can reach me directly by phone and on email to explore how we can help you and your team create your new future. See you next time.